Welcome to our third webinar in the filmMAKER series. My name is Colin Angevine. I'm a maker learning coach here at Digital Promise, and today we're joined by Dimitri, who's going to introduce himself right now. Dimitri, take it away.
Hello all, I am Dimitri. I am the video producer and digital storytelling coach. I have to keep remembering that insanely long title. But I also am a filmmaker. I've made documentaries, I've made short narrative films, I've made music videos, I produce projects, and magic happens. So I like bringing people together and collaborating and also helping people discover their own stories, which is why I'm here.
So we're really fortunate to have Dimitri, and I didn't say your full name the first time, Dimitri Moore. Take it down, look him up.
It's actually Dimitri William Moore, if we really want to,
thank you,
give the full expanse of it.
So we're really fortunate to have him here thanks to his expertise, and we're also really fortunate to be doing this webinar with him as that he's part of the team here at Digital Promise. So he and I have cooked up something that's different from the regular Q&A format that's happened in the previous webinars. So in just a few minutes, Dimitri has prepared a presentation that's going to introduce you to kind of the fundamentals of documentary filmmaking. And we're going to take probably the first half of the webinar, I think, working through that, and he and I will kind of be batting back and forth questions. But as we go, any questions that you have, please just drop them right into the chat box. And my goal is to really be hearing from you, the teachers who are taking on the filmMAKER challenge, and relay the questions that you have so that this webinar is really going to be what you need to do the best work you can with your students. So at any time, drop those questions in the chat, and especially in the second half of this webinar, we're going to be going back and forth with the Q&A. For those of you who have not tuned in to one of the webinars in this series yet, just to give you some kind of big picture context on this project, the filmMAKER challenge asks students to reinvent an everyday product, and at the same time to tell a story, to create a film telling the story of its process. So in this challenge, we're doing two things. We're pairing product design with filmmaking. And at first blush, that seems like two unrelated things, but really our thinking and connecting these two is that for all the great ideas and for all the great products that kids want to come in and make something that's going to make the world a better place, unless they can find a way to communicate those ideas, it's not going to go anywhere. So in this challenge, we're hoping to connect these two things so that students are both going to be engaging in the work of reimagining and reinventing an everyday product, and then using documentary film to share that message with everyone they can. A few times throughout this webinar, we might be referencing the teacher's guide, which you can find on the Digital Promise filmMAKER site. There are lots of great activities that kind of scaffold the skills that students might benefit from while they kind of gear up to this big challenge. So keep an ear out for that. If we mention it, you can certainly find it through the website. And I think that should be enough context for us to go ahead and jump right in. Dimitri, are you ready to kind of kick us off?
I am ready. And I'm glad, Colin, that you said documentary film, because sometimes when we say create a doc about something, people have this block that's like, oh my God, that's a big, huge, amazing, hard task to do. And it actually can be very, very simple. And I'm going to show you an example of a really short video that I found on Kickstarter like years ago, and kind of break it down for you to show you all of the pieces of what he did in order to tell his doc story, and then also to show you it's not this insurmountable task. Speaking of referencing the teacher's guide, there's a lot of resources in there for activities where you can always be taking pictures or taking videos of what you're working on. Even selfies of you with your design are nice. The students and you, the teacher, should be doing that constantly, because there's going to be a point in which they're going to have to present their project, or you're going to have to present what your students are doing. And having all of those images and videos will just make your life easier, and they can become a part of your doc or whatever to promote your project. So we're going to jump in. I'm going to share my screen here. And great. Right now you should be seeing Colin's beautiful face once more. And I'm going to switch over here to my Prezi presentation, which is making a short doc with me. And the example I'm using is a Kickstarter about playing cards by one Tyler Deeb. So this video we're going to start off with is an example, I feel, of creating a doc or a short video to describe your project. So here we go.
Oh, hey, Dimitri, you know what? We can't hear that, and I think that's because your headphones are in. Would you mind restarting and taking the headphones out?
Absolutely. So I'm going to go back here. Just take a look at all the things he does here, and then we'll break them down.
Hey Kickstarter, my name is Tyler Deeb, and I'm a graphic designer from Louisville, Kentucky, where I live with my wife and my kids. This is my truck, and this is my favorite coffee mug. My favorite mug. After transitioning to freelance work over 6 months ago, I've been taking every spare moment to develop personal projects in hopes that one project would rise to the top and be worth sinking my teeth into. This Kickstarter page is dedicated to that project. A custom designed deck of playing cards from front to back. Each illustration, pattern, and symbol unique. Playing cards have had a long history of different interpretations and styles, some of them really great and some of them just mediocre. With your help, I wanted to take the opportunity to add my deck to the collection. This is why this deck is unique. I spent hours, sometimes days, on each card, meticulously shaping the design for every number card, every jack, every queen, every king, every ace, and of course the backs. The cards will be professionally printed by the United States Playing Card Company, the same manufacturers as the bicycle brand playing cards. Each deck will be numbered, since this is the first edition and there will never be a deck like it. Chances are that you or someone you're buying a gift for this Christmas already have a deck of cards, but you're probably not playing with the full deck. That's why I've been working so hard to get this deck ready that if it's fully funded, I'll be able to get everyone their decks by December 18th. Thank you, Kickstarter, for taking the time to listen. I hope I made something that you can enjoy.
Okay.
That looked great. And hey, Dimitri, but before you start to kind of break that video down and talk us through what you were seeing there, you just got a shout out in the chat from Merrickville High School. So,
oh, hey, Merrickville.
So they're saying hello, and I hope they will chime in with their questions as we do this, and anybody else watching will do the same.
Great. I missed that school. I really wish I could visit Merrickville High School like every week. So good to have you guys here. So before I move on, I will say that Kickstarter video kind of establishing the credibility of the example I've brought on had 4,022 backers. Its goal was $6,250. It made $146,596. So
Wow.
he had a lot of gifts to send out, let's just say. So let's break it down to show what he did in this video. So first thing that he should do, and I'm using him as an example because it's a simple video that your students could replicate the format of, but also make it their own. So the first thing you should do in a video is introduce yourself and your world. So how did he do this? Well, in just 18 seconds, we learned about him, his wife, his children as they popped into their arms, his truck, his favorite mug, which fell, and sad face, and the space that he worked in. And so all of that was done in a quick manner and also with humor, right? He used some quick edits, nothing fancy, to introduce himself, a couple of sound effects. But we need to know who the person is that's working on it, and you can do that by talking directly to us or talking, speaking off screen, let's just say. But show us your world, show us who you are so we can connect with the person, not just with a project itself. So next thing he did was he told us his story. First of all, his story was relevant to the project. You can go on and on and on about every aspect of your life, but you really should tell a specific story that's connected to the project. So first of all, we learned that he's a freelancer, that 6 months ago, he started looking for that one personal project that he could sink his teeth into. And so that's something we've all encountered. We kind of do a lot of projects for everyone else, but we really wish we could find something that we can call our own. I know I went through that last year, and so this is his way of finding that. So he brought us from 6 months ago up to the present. Next thing that he did is he introed the project itself. So simply, he designs playing cards. But what he did, he gave us a very short history of playing cards themselves with some good examples and some bad examples. I don't know, that one with the cat with the guitar that you put an X through, I actually like that one. But in his opinion, that was a not so good example of playing cards. But then we get a little bit more about why. This isn't just a fun, cool project that he wants to do. He actually wants to add to the legacy of playing cards that's out there, right? And he shows us all of this by using BRoll. Now, I'm going to say the word BRoll quite a bit. If this were Pee-wee's Playhouse, that would be the big, whoa, craziness. That would be the big word that you should remember. BRoll is always, always, always important in a video because you don't want to just stare at someone's face for an entire video. As beautiful as that face may be, you're going to lose interest. And so you should always have things to cut to. And I'll go through like all the parts of the video a little bit later on. But basically here is he introed what his project was. So moving on, he then told us how we can help him. And the great thing is he was subtle about it. So first of all, he said, hey, Kickstarter. So he's talking to us as a Kickstarter audience, but he never actually said, give me money. He never actually said, donate to me, right? Because we all know what Kickstarter is, and we all can relate to that feeling of needing to support someone on a site like Kickstarter. And so he said things like, this Kickstarter page is dedicated to that project that he had found, and if it's fully funded. So I think this level of subtlety works great because you wouldn't necessarily want to have someone just walk up and say, give me money to you on the street. And so the same thing here, it's nice to have that subtlety. You want to connect with people emotionally and not just reach your hand into their pocket because you wouldn't want that done to you. So he tells us a story, he tells us about his project, and he injects some humor into it. But then once you kind of get people involved with who you are, then you have to show why this project is unique. One of our staff members here is doing a coloring book for kids. And I said to her, okay, that's great. There are a billion coloring books out there. So why is this one unique? Why is this one special? Why should this one exist? Same thing for your students' projects. You should always challenge them on why should this thing exist that you're developing, or why is it unique or different from anything else that's out there? So for his, he used a lot of phrases showing why it's unique, that it's hand-drawn. So it makes the viewer feel like it's special. The first edition, so you're getting in there on the ground floor of something new. And also, he says custom design. Not only the deck is custom designed, but each and every card is designed. And again, he tells us this, but then he also shows us using BRoll. At the moment he says each card is custom designed, from every jack to every king to every queen, he shows each of those cards. And he also gives you some visuals on the design process. You see shots of him drawing. You see shots of him walking over to a printer and pulling out a page. All of these things he's showing you while he's telling you. Apologies for me not having images in this. Much like Back to the Future, I haven't really painted it or made it to scale, but I'm working on this presentation. So it has more images later on.
Hey,
so,
Dimitri, can I pause you there for a sec?
Yeah, go for it.
So I'm just seeing that the phrase BRoll pop up again, and I'm just wondering for teachers who still are trying to understand based on context what that really means.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just talk a little bit more about that. So like what you're talking about there is when at first he's looking at the camera and he starts talking, and then he keeps on talking and you can hear his voice, but the footage that shows is something totally different, right?
Exactly. So there's what's called A-roll and B-roll. So let's just say, for instance, this presentation. The A-roll, if this presentation were a video, the A-roll would be myself talking like this. Right? So right now you see me. This would be the A-roll. So if this were an interview, if this were me discussing something, I would be talking to you, telling you, but then as an editor, I want to switch to something else to show you what I'm talking about. So then, I'm now sharing my screen here again. Presentation in and of itself is B-roll. Can you see it, Colin?
Yeah, great.
Great. So that's what you're cutting to. So if I'm talking about digging a ditch, you know, the A-roll would be me, the actual footage of me describing it, and the B-roll would be images of the shovel going down into the ground, the dirt, any things that you have there, the person actually digging, anything that shows you what's being talked about is B-roll. And you can use photos, you can use text, you can use recorded images, anything that shows what's being talked about aside from the person who's actually doing the talking.
Fantastic. Well, and that ties back to your point at the very beginning, which is, you know, the way you encourage teachers to document this as you go, right? So anytime you want to take a selfie with the project, anytime you have a cool moment and you want to capture a little bit, all of that footage can be great B-roll to provide some more context once you're editing the whole thing together.
Exactly, and I can give you two examples of how we've captured B-roll recently. Merrickville knows this. We just completed a video about our Learning Studios program, and what we did is we had videographers local to multiple cities around the world, including Merrickville. We had them go to the schools and film them as they're developing their projects. So they were with them along every step, and we saw them at the board, on their computers working on their project. We saw it as it happened. Now, you can't always have a professional videographer come to your classroom, so that's why the teachers and the students themselves, you all have phones. You don't have to worry about not having the latest, greatest, most expensive, video camera or DSLR camera. Anything, even with your phone, you can capture B-roll and photos that can be used later on. Because we're now used to YouTube, the standard of quality of an image that we'll accept as an audience, the bar has gotten lower. Not to say you shouldn't aim for high quality, but if you can't get high quality, get the image. People will forgive you for it once you're online. And the second example of capturing B-roll, we have our 360 VR challenge, where students are creating videos, and then we look at them, showcase them, have winners and whatnot. We wanted to tell the story of how those films were made. Hardly any of the teachers filmed any B-roll while they were making the project. So what we did is we went to the school, interviewed the students and the teachers about how it was made, and then we had the students change into a different outfit, and we set up situations where they were in pre-production, production, or post. So we basically filmed in one day a mock behind the scenes. So we had B-roll to cut to when they said we were setting up the camera. We literally got a shot a couple hours later of them setting up a camera, but faked it so it would look like it was months ago. So you can do that, but it's so much harder and so much less authentic. You should just capture as much footage and photos as you can while the project is happening.
Great.
Great.
And actually, so, maybe a related question there. I think we mentioned this in the teacher guide. But as students and teachers are amassing all of this potential B-roll to use in their final edited video, they're going to have potentially hours and hours of content for a video that we're thinking is going to be 3 to 5 minutes long, right? So
that's true.
Somewhere around, I think in the teacher guide we said expect 95% of your footage to end up on the cutting room floor. Does that feel right to you?
That does. I mean, for a short video, we did a 5-minute video, and we easily have about a terabyte worth of footage. I'll say maybe 6 to 7 hours worth of footage for a 5-minute video. I'm not even going to get into how a featured length film, Hollywood film, how many times they shot the film before they got the actual, hour and a half, 2-hour-long film. They could have made the same film 12 times at best. And that's with different takes, right, of the same shots, whereas with a documentary film, you just have a whole bunch of B-roll and a whole bunch of interviews in which you only include maybe 10 seconds of what that person says in a full interview. So expect that. It's okay. You want to just get as many options as you can, so when you get into editing, you have some room to play in order to tell your story and experiment with the different ways to assemble it.
Great, great. I think
okay,
we can hop back to the Prezi if you're okay with that. That was a great detour.
Absolutely. Yeah, I like my detours to go up a hill, down a ravine, past the third mountain, go down the right. So, but here we are back. So going back, we're showing how this project is unique. Next, we establish trust between yourself and the audience. The audience has to trust you in order to go along. And even if you're not asking for money, you're getting the audience's attention, right, for however long that video is. So you have to establish some trust between the two of you. So what does he do? Visually, he establishes trust and credibility because he shows us his process using B-roll. So we see a nice design room, we see, drawing, we see laptops, we see printers. We trust that he is a designer and that he could pull off this project. If he's lying, that'd be a wonderful con, that to set up all of that. So for the moment, we trust him that he knows how to do this. He also shows us his meticulous design prowess. So he goes through and shots of him drawing every single card, and he probably only, we only see him draw like one line on a sheet of paper where a design is happening. But that's, again, hours and even years of designing that leads to that moment of us being able to see even a fraction of the time he spends designing. So again, you only need a small amount of shots in order to set up the credibility that people have in this project. Same thing with building something. You can see it happen really quickly, but know and trust that there was a lot that went into it. Verbally, though, and this is very important, he name drops. He says that the cards will be professionally printed by the United States Playing Card Company, the same manufacturers as the Bicycle brand playing cards. So not only is he making these cards, but he's not just making them and going to print them out on his home printer. He's not just going to go to cardmaking.com, some low-end type of website. He says he's going to firstly professionally printed. Do we know what professionally means? No. But then he qualifies it by saying a company which we may not have heard of, but sounds interesting, United States Playing Card. But then he name drops a brand that almost everyone knows, Bicycle, right? So it shows us that he's thought about where this is going to go. He thought about the quality he wants in the project, and he knows that his audience will know at least one of these brands that he mentions. So he's earned our trust by this point. Next, you have to manage the expectations of the audience. So what will the audience get out of this? When will the audience get it? So one thing he says here, if it's fully funded, he qualifies it by saying if, I will be able to get everyone their decks by December 18th. Of obviously the year that the video came out. So I actually followed his Kickstarter and went down the line and watched a lot of the posts. After December 18th, there was no posts, and then sometime in January, February is when he started sending out cards. Some people had written back, hey, where are my cards? It's after December, I'd like to know. He was responding to them saying, hey, we're working on it. We got to get postage. We're working out a few things. I probably would have given myself a little more wiggle room than saying December 18th, but at least he said it in the video and had a starting point to manage everyone's expectations of what and when they would get it and what they would get out of it. So again, if you're designing a part for a bike, right, what are you going to get and when? Always put that in your video so that people understand what they're getting out of this, because we are selfish beings. Not saying that in a bad way, but we are always looking at what will help us, what will make our lives better. And being a part of a project means telling someone what they will get out of being a part of this project for whatever you're going to get out of it. Okay, moving on here to, always, always, always say thank you. And I'm just saying to you, thank you for reading this slide. Saying thank you is important, whether it be in the video, whether it be in text afterward, in emails, not only for giving you money or supporting your project in whatever way you need that support, but a video itself is a transaction, and you're holding someone's attention, and so you need to reward that attention. So Tyler does a great job not only of saying what the rewards will be as far as the playing cards that you'll get, but he also rewards us by giving us some humor and giving us some pretty images to watch. So just always be thinking about being thankful in whatever way you can. So now, what elements of video production did he use? We covered it a little bit before, but I'm going to go into it right now. First of all, BRoll. There are shots of Tyler talking directly to us, both verbally and visually. I'm actually going to see if I can go over to the video itself. I'm not going to play the sound, but you're going to see right here is a shot of him looking directly to us. Now, one thing that is more of a personal preference for me, a lot of times traditionally when we're watching a documentary and someone's being interviewed, they're talking to an interviewer in the room, even though you never hear the voice of that interviewer. But a lot of times the person is talking like this. So you, the audience, are watching me, the person being interviewed, and I'm pouring out my life story and all the reasons you should give to children in Africa and all the reasons that this building should be built and why and what happened to me after I got cancer. But I'm not actually connecting with you because I'm not looking at you. And we connect a lot through the eyes, right? People, when you see both eyes, if someone is like this, you either feel like you're being ignored or you feel like there's some mystery, mostly because you're not seeing my face and my eyes. And so I prefer when people are doing documentaries that they actually look directly into the camera for as much as it feels comfortable. So that's why I like with Tyler in this example, he actually is looking directly at you while he's making his appeal. So that's what BRoll is. It's whatever your interview footage and where you're getting all of your information, both visually and auditorily. Next is BRoll. So you first have BRoll of Tyler working in his workspace, right? So see if I can pinpoint a shot here. So you got shots of him sitting at his desk. You've got shots, again, looking at his computer. You've got wide shots. You've got medium shots. You've got close-ups. You've got some things over the shoulder. He really has a range of shots all around the room. You pretty much could close your eyes and walk around his room because of all of the shots he's giving you. So that's a lot of options that he filmed earlier on to show us. And then we have shots of him drawing his cards. So that's one type of B-roll with the actual artist in the shot. Sorry, going back here. The next type of B-roll is of the cards and the designs themselves, right? So he has multiple shots of the kings, the queens he's drawing out. He's talking about them. All of the shots of the cards throughout history. That's another, it's all B-roll, but I broke it into these two different segments of B-roll with him and B-roll without him. You really, again, want to capture as much footage as you can so that you have not only you can cover up some interviews, so you can cover up some edit points that you don't want people to see that are jump cuts, but then also they help tell the story so that when someone says, I'm drinking a Pepsi, you have a shot of that person, the close-up of their mouth and the Pepsi going in, of the bottle itself, anything that helps tell the story of what they're saying in that moment. Next was
Dimitri,
music.
if I kind of want to hop in and just make a comment.
Sure.
You know, as a learner along right there with the teachers who are watching, you know, at the beginning of this presentation, I felt like there were a lot of really light touches that you were pointing out. So everything from establishing credibility, kind of developing this rapport with the audience, humor, right? All of these things that like you weren't diving in and leading off with how to frame the shot just right.
Yes.
Your priorities here are really about these things about how you establish the right relationship between the viewer and the documentary film. And I think what's really cool is now I think as you're kind of giving us the vocabulary to talk about this and between A-roll and B-roll, and then hearing you mention, you know, wide shots, close shots, that each of these moments that you frame are targeted with the goal of, you know, developing that relationship. You know, so I wanted to kind of make a comment on seeing a really cool way that I think you're pulling all of this together. That, you know, as teachers are watching too, and we're about halfway through, if you have any specific questions about how Dimitri is kind of seeing these things as a filmmaker himself, you know, these subtle details of, you know, one of those latest shots that you just scanned through there of the artist, you know, a close-up of his work and he's drawing like this, and just that moment of framing the work up front and him in the background, or the over the shoulder, right? All of those little moments that, you know, if I'm a student walking around with my phone trying to capture the footage, really thinking about what those moments are and how they can help you establish that kind of credibility, or how they're going to, you know, help develop that relationship, I think is really exciting.
Absolutely. And so the thing is too, is going into shots just a little deeper, is that there is a relationship that's being built even with the images that you are presenting, right? And as example, you know, let's just say I'm making a video about my relationship to this pen, right? And you have, you know, all of you have heard about wide shots, medium shots, close-ups. If you haven't, there are multiple guides, including in the filmmaker guide, of what those are. But the reason why those are important, sometimes we just place a camera down and we just let it roll and film everything that's happening, right? But the thing is this pen means one thing to you if I'm using it out here and you see me, you see the pen, you see how I'm using it. But then when I hold it up to you this close, right, you see more detail on it. You're getting an intimate look of the pen. You're seeing how my hand holds it, right? You're seeing the pressure points, the little changes in color in my nail, right? That could show that I really, really enjoy because I'm gripping it tightly, or if it's loose and flopping around, it's kind of, you know, we're okay with each other, right? But there's a level of intimacy that a shot size can do. Same thing with talking to someone, right? If I'm back here, you're seeing me, but you're also seeing the expanse of the room, so that gives you a little bit of breadth. But then if I do a little close-up here, that could be kind of awkward, right? Which, as a filmmaker, I may want you to feel awkward, or I may want you to feel very intimate. Obviously, right now, it's awkward because I look very strange in this web camera. But those are all choices that the students can make in deciding the tone of the project and what kind of relationship they want the audience to have with the subject.
As simple as those moments were, right?
Yeah.
Like this one right here.
Yeah.
Red, I think that says a lot for how the students who are making this documentary film are telling the story as they capture the footage, but really that they're telling the story, you know, before they capture footage, when they're figuring out how to frame it. They're telling the story after they capture the footage, and they're deciding, you know, do I want to have the pen B-roll in there while I'm talking about this other part? And so, you know, thinking about storytelling and all of those light touches that you listed right up at the top of the presentation, really I can see how it's coming together in this whole process.
Yeah, and I'll even you know, I'll go back to just a quick example from Tyler's before we move on. This is one of my favorite shots of it because it's not of him. There are shots of him drawing, there are shots of him printing out, but just this simple shot of him holding an unfinished image and his thumbs there, there's so many subconscious things that are going on, the relationship between the person and their design, that there's a step in which he actually stops and looks at the design before he continues on for it to be finished. There's an intimacy there that this shot kind of creates, that there's so much blank space around the card. It really gives you an idea of there is a design process here, and it's not just about the finished product, and that he really cares about the product that he's making. So there, again, there's many different ways of conveying information. Again, seeing it on a laptop versus seeing it on paper, that different shot sizes can give you. So
let me just use that to ask kind of a follow-up question. So in that example of holding the page and you can see his thumbs.
Yeah.
Right. I totally get what you're saying, that there's a real It kind of reveals his process. It reveals the effort he was investing in this project. For the filmmaker who was making this, and for the teachers trying to figure out, how am I going to capture that kind of a moment? How am I going to help my students capture that kind of a moment in their project? Is that the kind of thing that they should be thinking about and trying to create a storyboard that has those moments before they film it? Or might those moments kind of emerge when they're looking through their B-roll and they're doing the editing after the fact?
So you should actually be thinking about that throughout. You're never going to have all of the answers up front. But one of my film teachers in college kind of explained it this way. You have 3 chances to make this film. It's not about doing all these things and then you get 1 chance just to make the film. You have 3 chances. In pre-production, you're designing what the puzzle is going to look like in the end, and you're trying to figure out what the shots will be and what kind of emotion will it convey. And then when you're done with pre-production, you're like, great, okay, this is what I think the movie will look like. I've used 1 chance to make this film. Then in production, you're building the pieces of the puzzle. If this were a jigsaw puzzle, you're actually cutting the cardboard, you're painting the piece of the picture on the puzzle. And that's your second chance to make the film. You're going to have some things that go exactly as you planned from pre-production. You're going to have some happy accidents of someone saying something great, a performance, if it's narrative, a performance that happens that you didn't expect. There are so many moments in movie history that were improv, right, on set, and never meant to be, but then now last longer than the actual film itself. But production is your second chance to make this film. Now in editing, that's your third chance. You can put all of these pieces together. You can redo something. There's movie magic that happens. You can create an entire moment or scene using all the pieces that you have. But then, and I've had so many moments where happy accidents have happened in post, something we didn't expect to happen. There's, in the Learning Studios video, there's a shot of 3 girls, and 2 of them are like figuring out how they're going to make something. And all of a sudden, when you pan over, the camera then changes focus, right, from the 2 girls to 1 girl, and all she does is just looks at them and holds up a bowl, kind of like, you want to use this, right? And it's just this moment of like really cool attitude where she's just like, I have the answer right here. And it's so subtle, but I love it. And we included it and worked with the A-roll or the voiceover from the interview that's being said. And those moments kind of come together and you use them. You look for them, you try to plan for them, but when they happen, it's great. So you should be thinking about the relationships between every single thing that's in it, the shot size, the music. You know, there are moments in which you kind of see someone move and the music just does that you choose. You go with that. So you plan as much as you can, but you also be open to the random things that happen that could work for making your project an emotional experience.
So if I can ask a really practical follow-up, I love that framing of you've got 3 chances to make your film. I think that's a really cool way to think of it. And for the teachers who are trying to strategize about how am I going to, help my students get to this point, what are some of the different roles that students can take on in, contributing to this project in general? And what are the places where you really would benefit from having some continuity? So I'm thinking about, some teachers might, if it's a particularly big group, some folks might have 1 team working on the product and 1 team entirely working on the film.
Right.
Or maybe there are different roles in terms of each of the different parts of that need to go into creating the film.
Absolutely.
And maybe, teams will step in and out. But it sounds like, even though there are these 3 different opportunities to tell the story, maybe some continuity between that would really be useful to make sure that it's a coherent message. So
Right.
talk a little bit about how to strategize and how to think about the different roles that are going to go into this and how to engage students in those roles.
Absolutely. Let me really quickly, if you don't mind, Colin, let me go back to that slide, finish that one slide of all the pieces.
Getting carried away.
And then I can get to the roles. Absolutely.
Great.
Let me go back and share here, and then boop. So A-roll, B-roll, 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 B-roll. Lots of B-roll. Music. His music was very subtle, but it can have a lesser effect or a greater effect depending on the type of video you have. It can be just kind of moody and slow in the background, or I was named after a Russian film composer named Dimitri, who was known for being very bombastic, and if you had, you know, the Spanish cannons firing at the Alamo, the music was even louder than the cannons. You know, you have those different options that you can do with music, but you should definitely consider it. My note to teachers is that the music should be something you have permission to use, or the students have permission to use. There is a misnomer that if you use music from Modest Mouse or Beyonce or whatever for educational purposes, you know, you can't be sued or whatnot. The problem is not whether or not you can be sued or whether you win the lawsuit. It's whether the suit would come, period. And if you put music in that someone else owns, the one argument that I used with a group of students that did this, I said to them, you only now own 90% of your project. So all that work you put into it, someone else owns 10% of it, meaning that music. So try to create music or find music you can buy, or another student in the school that creates music, getting their permission for something they own. Get permission for music. Just don't try to legalize your way out of using someone else's published music, because it could bring problems. Lastly, in his video, there were some basic edits. Sometimes editing can be scary. He just did a whole bunch of jump cuts, which is basically one shot ends and another shot begins. There were a couple of moments early on when he was just introducing himself where there was like a white flash going from one shot to the next. See if I can find one here. So these are all very straight cuts from one thing to the next. And yes, there we go. That was a kind of what we call a fade to white. That kind of denotates another chapter, which he did move from the personal into now the why he was making this project. But it's all really simple edits that you can do in Premiere or Final Cut, iMovie if you don't have any other options. And then lastly, he used some found images of other types of playing cards, the dogs, the traditional playing cards we're used to. So all of those things came together into his project, and they're very easy to source and find. Okay, so before I get to the goal, and let's get out of that, Colin asked about the roles that students can play. So it's actually a very wide-ranging. You have a lot of options, right? So with the 360 stories we did last week, there was one film in which it was one filmmaker. He filmed, he developed the idea, he edited it, he had a whole bunch of people in it because it was the life cycle of one of their theater productions, right? So you got a whole bunch of footage of backstage, on stage, during rehearsals, during the show, during the tech call when everyone was standing in a circle, like getting pumped up for the show. He even did a really cool thing where the actors were in a fight on stage, and as one was falling to the ground in a rehearsal shot, they transitioned to that same fall and continued it during the actual performance. So there's really cool things you do, but he did it by himself. There was another project where it was a group of 5 people, and all of them had a say in the idea, and all of them had a say in the edit, but then each one took on different roles. One of them actually had their hands on the keyboard editing. One of them was actually setting up the camera. One of them was actually talking to the talent or the actors in the project. So it's really up to figuring out if you are putting a group of students together, I would say always start out that way. I would not start out with a lone wolf, right? If someone really has done projects before and they know they can shoot, edit, and all of that stuff themselves, let them do it. But if you have a group that hasn't really done it yet, let them get together in a group. We have a resource in our 360 toolkit that kind of goes through all of the actual roles. Director, which is the one managing the idea, the producer, which is the one pulling together all the logistics, the camera person, the editor, the production designer, the one that's like seeing how it looks, setting up the room and the props and all of that. Those are all breakdowns that can either be condensed or expanded. On a student film, you've got one person handling all of the art, and one person handling the camera. but on a major film, you could have a department of 500 people that are handling the camera, the lights, the props, building sets, green screen, all of that. So it really, how many people are doing what depends on the team. But I would say get some small groups together, let them talk about an idea. As they talk, a lot of times they will figure out themselves what they want to do and how they want to work together. That one group of 5 students I told you about, one of them kind of emerged as the lead director. And while everyone was always fighting with her and on the idea and trying to get on the same page, eventually they thanked her for being that bossy person that like really challenged all the ideas that everyone else was willing to run with. So I would say get them together, do some team building, let them kind of read what the roles are. But once they have the idea, they should all agree on the main idea that they want to go after. They should all agree that we're ready to go from pre-production into post with their plan. They should all agree on, great, we've got all the footage we need in production. And when the edit is done, they should all agree that this is the edit we want to show to someone for feedback, or we want to show to an audience because it's done. Within that construct, whatever they do is what they should feel comfortable doing and ready to explore. I like to allow people to experiment, but then have a backup plan. I had someone experiment helping me raise money for a film. Great, you can experiment, that's great, but we still need the money by this date. So I had a backup plan in case they failed, that we'd have that. If they succeeded, great. They now know how to raise money for a film. Same thing with camera. You want to let people experiment with the camera, but then also make sure there's some quality control there so that the time isn't wasted and the film, it still happens.
Cool. Cool. This has been great, Dimitri. Let's hop back to the Prezi and we'll wrap up the presentation. Yep. and we'll call it, we'll wrap up the webinar pretty soon, I think. This has been fantastic.
Great. So lastly, boom, your goal. Your goal is great. Your goal is to have one film that can show off all of the work that your students have done. And here is a recap of what Tyler's film did and what your films should do. You should introduce yourself and your world. If it's a narrative film, you have a character that you introduce and show the world that they live in. I've just recently gotten into Breaking Bad, and the first episode, you get to know who Walter White is, you get to know he's a science teacher, you get to know his cancer, and you see the school that he lives in, the school that he works in, the house he lives in, the town he lives in. There's all of these B-roll shots of just atmosphere, right? Plants, the cactus, the chalkboard at the school. All these things introduce you to the world. So that's a very key part of it. Then telling your story, right? Bring us up to why we're watching this video, what you guys have done in your design process that led you to needing this video and what you need help with. Introduce the project itself. Why are we here? What is this that we're watching? And be short and to the point. How we can help you. What do you need from us? We're watching this video. You've got our attention. What can I do now to help you with whatever it is you're presenting me in this video? How is your project unique? How is it different from anything else that's out there? Establishing trust between yourself and your audience. Make sure they believe that you can do what you're saying in this video or have done, and that they're watching a genuine experience. And saying thank you. Start by being simple, and then also be honest in your project. And one other quick example I will give you of a really cool video that I like is there was an artist who does these amazing photographs out at Burning Man. And he starts off his presentation video showing you these amazing sand-blown photos, right? He just goes through them like a slideshow. Then he shows you this really cool wheelbarrow contraption that he uses to wheel it around Burning Man with lights on it and a camera and tripod. But then he flips the script and shows you a photo of himself in a hospital bed, dehydrated with a broken collarbone. Even though he takes these wonderful photos, the rig is too heavy and too cumbersome to walk around Burning Man with. So now you see this amazing work he does. He has emotionally brought you in that it is taking a toll, literal toll on his body. So then he shows you the reason why we're here, which is to invest in a smaller vest that he has designed that has lights attached to it and the camera that he can easily walk around doing all of these photos. So now you want to buy the photos, you want to help him do, not kill himself to create this art, and now he wants you to invest in the prototype of something new. So it's that emotional connection. You get to know who he is, why you can help him, why it's different, and he's now thanking you by giving you this gift of whatever photos you want that he creates with this new design. So start simple. Tell the simple story you're trying to do. Don't try to, have green screen and do all these big, amazing, big budget things. Start with what you can do right there in the room, in your classroom, and then build from there. It's amazing the story you can tell just by starting with the resources, the materials, and the limitations you already have. And with that, I say thank you, because you should always say thank you.
Dimitri, this has been great, and I kind of want to just go back to that last point, because I think it's a great message to end on, and I think it also ties into the product design part of this project, where I think a lot of students might have these really great, really ambitious ideas, and maybe some folks will really be able to reinvent these products, and it's going to work, and 6 months from now their product is going to be on Amazon and people around the world are going to be buying it. But it's also, more than likely that the ideas will be great and they just didn't have enough time or enough expertise just yet to execute the way they would really like to. So I think the filmmaking here is this really powerful opportunity for them to, establish this emotional and personal connection, and then just tell their story, right? And I'm hoping that that will help take some of the heat off of teachers who were trying to, manage expectations and make this a successful and fun experience for students. Because I mean, even if the product doesn't, surpass your wildest dreams, I think the documentary film here is a really great opportunity to have something that's going to live on, even if the product itself doesn't.
Exactly. And just carrying off on that point, we get so wrapped up in perfection, in making sure it's perfect and it's exact and it's right. The point is to finish something and put it out there, and then use what you learned from that to make the next one better. I'm not saying put out rubbish, but finish something. And I'll use myself as an example. That presentation, that Prezi that I went through, had no images in it, had no, B-roll for all intent and purpose in it. And that's not something I prefer, but I created something and I put it out there for you to see it, because you're going to respond to it differently than I, feel like I want everyone to respond to it. Now, my next Prezi, my next version of this will have images. I'll get better at it. The next one will be better. The next one will be better. But I did not let fear stop me from showing it to you. I put it out there, let it be the best it could be, and live in the world that we've been in for the last hour, and then the next one will be better. Same thing for your students. Finish the project. No one ever has enough time. No one ever has enough money. No one ever has enough resources. But you have the time that you have the resources that you have. You can complete something, and your students should just commit and finish it, learn from it, and everything that they learn from that one will make the next one better and the next one better, leading all the way up to that Oscar-winning, Golden Globe sweeping, SAG award-winning project. You'll get there, but you have to finish it in order to move on to the next one and the next one and the next one.
And so not only is that a great message to close on, but I think that might be a perfect segue into the next webinar that's coming up next week on human-centered design. So I don't know how you did that, Dimitri, but you nailed it. Listen,
hey,
Dimitri,
you just do things.
Dimitri, thank you so much. This has been a great hour. There's been tons of great content in here. I'm sure it will be helpful for our teachers. So thank you so much for taking the time. This has been great.
Thank you. Thank you for having me do it, and thank you for listening.
All right, take care.
Take care.